quiet fear I never wanted to admit for most of my life. I told myself I was fine with less. I didn't say it out loud with bitterness or anger. I said it calmly, almost proudly. I convinced myself that wanting more money meant losing something important, like values or humility. I grew up hearing that money changes people, that it makes them selfish, cold, distant. So instead of questioning those ideas, I absorbed them. I didn't see them as beliefs, I saw them as truths. And for a long time, they gave me comfort. From the outside, my life looked stable. I had a job, a routine, and just enough money to get through the month if nothing went wrong. Primera paid my rent, 8 simple meals, helped my family when I could. When people asked if I wanted more, I always answered the same way. Don't need much. I'm okay like this. It sounded mature, responsible, almost enlightened. But deep down, something didn't sit right. That voice I ignored at night wasn't ambition. It was fear. I was afraid of trying and failing. Afraid of stepping into something unfamiliar and realizing I wasn't capable. Afraid of being judged if I reached for more and didn't succeed. So instead of admitting that fear, I wrapped it in moral language. I told myself money wasn't important. I repeated phrases like simple life is better and money doesn't buy happiness. Those ideas became my shield. They helped me avoid risk. They helped me stay still. I didn't realize then how much that mindset was shaping my limits. Only later did I understand how mindset shapes your life isn't just about thoughts, but about the boundaries you quietly accept. At night, when things were quiet, my thoughts were louder. I thought about the people I loved and the things I couldn't provide. I thought about emergencies, unexpected costs, and how close I always was to being stuck. Kalasta. I tried to practice how to stay positive in tough times, but positivity didn't erase the anxiety. It only softened it. The truth was, staying poor didn't make me it just made me vulnerable. And I hated admitting that. I remember lying awake one night, staring at the ceiling, realizing my fear of money wasn't protecting me from stress. It was creating it. I had confused safety with stagnation. I thought avoiding money would keep my life simple, but it actually made it fragile. That realization didn't come with clarity or relief. It came with discomfort. Because once you see that your limits are self-imposed, you can't unsee it. And that's when everything began to change. When playing it safe stopped feeling safe, there was a moment when my logic stopped protecting me. It didn't happen during a crisis at first. It happened quietly. In ordinary days, when I realized how narrow my margin for error really was. One unexpected bill, one health issue, one problem I couldn't solve with good intentions. I started to see that what I called enough was actually just barely surviving. And survival isn't stability. It's tension disguised as routine. That's when I began to understand that how mindset shapes your life isn't abstract. It shows up in how prepared you are when life stops being predictable. I noticed how often I justified inaction with moral arguments. I told myself I wasn't chasing money because I valued peace. But peace that depends on everything going right isn't peace at all. It's fragile. I had read so much about how to stay positive in tough times, but positivity couldn't pay for emergencies. It couldn't buy options. It couldn't reduce the constant background stress of knowing I had no real buffer. That realization hurt because it exposed a truth I had avoided. Staying humble didn't make me strong. It made me limited. What really shook me was realizing that my fear didn't just affect me. It affected the people around me. I thought I was being responsible by not taking risks, but in reality, I was passing the cost of my fear onto others. When someone I loved needed help, my answer was often emotional support. Instead of real support, I hated that feeling. It made me feel powerless. And powerlessness doesn't come from lack of character. It comes from lack of capacity. That's when how to stay hopeful when struggling took on a meaning for me. Hope without capacity is just waiting. I also started questioning the stories I had inherited about money. None of them were mine. They came from parents who struggled, from communities that learned to associate wealth with corruption, from warnings meant to protect me from disappointment. But protection had turned into a cage. I wasn't avoiding greed. I was avoiding responsibility. Learning how to control negative thoughts didn't help much anymore because the problem wasn't negativity. It was fear dressed up as virtue. Slowly, I began to see money for what it really is. Not a reward, not a sin, but a tool, a neutral one. Just like time or energy, you can waste it or you can use it. But pretending you don't want it doesn't make you better. It just makes you less prepared. And that's when playing it safe stopped feeling safe at all. Realizing money wasn't the problem, fear was once I allowed myself to question my beliefs. Something uncomfortable happened. The story I had told myself for years began to fall apart. I had blamed money for things it never did. Stress, greed, selfishness, corruption. But when I looked closer, those things didn't come from money. They came from people, from choices, from fear. Money didn't create those traits. It only amplified what was already there. That realization forced me to face an even harder truth. My problem was never money. It was fear. Fear had shaped my decisions quietly. It told me not to try because failing would hurt. It told me not to want more because wanting more might expose me. So instead of learning, experimenting, or growing, I stayed still. I told myself I was content, but contentment built on fear isn't. Peace, it's avoidance. I started to see clearly how mindset shapes your life plays out in real consequences. My mindset wasn't neutral. It was defensive. And defensive mindsets don't build capacity. They shrink. Italiano. I thought back to all the moments I had avoided opportunities because they felt risky. Learning a new skill. Starting something small on the side. Asking questions I didn't know the answers to. Each time, fear whispered that staying where I was felt safer. And I listened. Not once did I ask what that fear was costing me Lumta. I tried to practice how to stay positive in tough times, but positivity without courage only delays growth. It doesn't replace it. What hurt most was realizing how long I had confused humility with hiding. True humility isn't pretending you don't want more. It's knowing who you are and still choosing to grow. I had told myself that wanting wealth would make me greedy, but the truth was simpler. I was afraid of responsibility. Responsibility to succeed. Responsibility to fail and keep going. Responsibility to manage more than I was used to. Learning how to control negative thoughts helped me name that fear instead of pretending it wasn't there. Once fear was exposed, it lost some of its power. It didn't disappear, but it stopped pretending to be wisdom. I could finally see it clearly. Fear wasn't protecting my values. It was protecting my comfort. And comfort, I realized, had never helped me when things truly mattered. Learning that wanting more is about responsibility. The real shift happened when I stopped asking myself if wanting more money made me a bad person and started asking a different question. What would happen if I didn't change? That question removed the moral fog I'd been hiding behind. I saw clearly that my desire for more wasn't about luxury or status. It was about responsibility. Responsibility to be useful, to be prepared, to not panic every time life demanded more than I could give. That's when I understood deeply that wanting more money isn't greedy. Avoiding growth out of fear is what's irresponsible. I began to see examples everywhere. People who had built wealth the right way weren't careless or empty. They were calm, capable, grounded. They didn't chase money for ego. They built it so they could handle problems when they arrived. I realized I had admired their stability while secretly judging their ambition. That contradiction kept me learning how mindset shapes your life became painfully real. My mindset had limited what I believed I was allowed to want. And if you don't allow yourself to want more, you never build the skills required to get it. This was also when my idea of fear changed. Fear didn't disappear, but it changed shape. Instead of being afraid of failing, I became afraid of staying afraid of reaching a moment when someone I loved needed help, and I had nothing but excuses. I understood how to stay hopeful when struggling wasn't about waiting for circumstances to improve. It was about becoming someone capable of improving them. Hope without action had kept me passive. Responsibility pushed me forward. I started small. Not dramatically, not perfectly. I asked questions. I tried things that didn't work. And yes, I failed. But something surprising happened. Each failure hurt less than the fear I had lived with before. At least now I was building capacity. I didn't need to master how to control negative thoughts as much anymore, because action gave those thoughts less room to dominate. Wanting more money stopped feeling like a character flaw and started feeling like honesty. Honesty about what life demands. Honesty about what it takes to protect the people you love. Honesty about the fact that good intentions don't solve real problems. Resources. And building resources, I finally understood, isn't greed. It's preparation. Why building wealth is an act of courage, not greed looking back. Now, I can say this without hesitation. Wanting more money didn't change who I was. It revealed who I had the potential to become. The moment I stopped hiding behind fear, I stopped judging myself for wanting more. I realized that money was never the goal. Capacity was the ability to act when life demanded action. The ability to help without hesitation. The ability to face emergencies without panic. That's when everything finally made sense. Wanting more money isn't greedy. Wanting to stay small when you could grow is what costs you others the most. I learned that values don't disappear when money enters your life. They're tested. And if your values are real, money doesn't corrupt them. It amplifies them. If you're generous, you become more generous. If you care, you can care in bigger ways. I had spent years believing that staying poor kept me pure. But purity without power doesn't protect anyone. Understanding how mindset shapes your life came down to this: the beliefs. You hold a bit money quietly, decide how much impact you're capable of having. Fear still shows up sometimes. It always does. Fear of failing again. Fear of being judged. Fear of losing what I've built. But now I recognize fear for what it is. A signal, not come on. I don't let it decide for me anymore. Learning how to control negative thoughts didn't mean eliminating them. It meant refusing to let them freeze me in place. Action shrinks fear. Responsibility weakens it. And growth proves it wrong over time. If you're struggling right now, telling yourself you don't need more, I want you to pause and be honest. Is that belief giving you powerless? Practicing how to stay hopeful when struggling doesn't mean pretending you're fine with less, if less is hurting you. It means believing you're capable of more and being brave enough to work toward it. Wealth built with integrity isn't a sin, it's a tool. And tools exist to be used. So here's the real question this story leaves you with. What belief about money are you carrying that's really just fear in disguise? Because once you name it, you can challenge it. And once you challenge it, you create room to grow. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. And that kind of growth changes everything.